Hello, good morning. I'm delighted to welcome you to the December 2020 Lewy Body Support Group meeting. My name is Dr. Ramona Weil, and I'm a consultant neurologist specialising in Lewy body dementia. We're thrilled that you're able to join us over the internet, and we hope that this meeting is interesting and also helpful. Our plan this morning is that I'll speak for a few minutes about updates on Lewy body dementia that have happened over the last year, and also some changes in people working at the Rare Dementia Support Group. Our first speakers will be our new Admiral Nurse, Hannah Gardner, and Rachel Thompson, Consultant Admiral Nurse for Lewy body dementia. Next, we will hear a personal story of living with Lewy body dementia from one of our members, Alan Crawford, followed by a conversation with Mihoko Ogawa-Higgins, a carer, about her experience being a carer during COVID-19. After that, we'll have a preview of the animation film that's been made by Simon Ball, professional animator, together with some of the Lewy body support group members. We will finish with a question and answer session from all of our speakers, and you can submit your questions to the chat box through the meeting. So please do start thinking about them and get your questions in. We'll try to get through as many as we can. So some research updates. I'm going to tell you about 4 research updates, and we'll also put some information about these in our meeting summary, so you'll have some of the relevant contacts for these. So the first is that there's been some clinical guidelines. They're really the first comprehensive clinical guidelines for Lewy body dementia that have been published by the Newcastle group and led by John Paul Taylor from Newcastle. These are extremely useful as they bring together best practice for Lewy body disease. The second is some research on hallucinations. Our group have had some new research published on hallucinations in Lewy body disease led by Dr. Angelika Zarkali. We showed that a brain network is affected in people who hallucinate, and that this network is important in helping the brain to control how it shifts between different brain states. This work was made possible by volunteers coming to our department to have brain scans, many of whom are here today. So thank you to those people who've helped us with this research. I also want to update you about a new clinical trial called Top Hat. We'll be opening a new clinical trial for hallucinations in Lewy body disease. It's funded by Parkinson's UK, and it will look at how a drug called ondansetron, an anti-sickness tablet that we think is likely to help with hallucinations. It will be open to people with Parkinson's hallucinations that have become bothersome. Some people with Lewy body dementia can also take part. If you would like to take part, please get in touch with us, and our research nurse will tell you more about the trial. And we'll send you contact details for our clinical trial after this meeting. So finally, I want to update you about some new research that we're carrying out. We're about to start a new area of research trying to understand the brain circuits involved in hallucinations. There are 2 parts to this research, and you can get involved in either or both of these sections. The first is a pilot section testing our visual tasks remotely. You can do this from home just using a computer, and we will guide you through it. The second part is to have an MRI scan in one of our new extra strong MRI scanners. This will give us even more detailed images of the layers of the brain. If you want to get involved in either of these, then please contact Dr. Angelika Zarkali, and we will send you her contact details in the summary after the webinar. So finally, some staff updates. Dr. Louise Leyland, our postdoctoral researcher, who many of you know, has left to become a research manager in a research consultancy company. She's been with us for 3 years and helped build up our research program, and she'll be greatly missed. We have some new faces in the Rare Dementia Support Group, thanks to some additional funding during the COVID-19 pandemic, and you'll hear from some of them today. Alicia Willoughby will be helping to reach out to existing members and supporting the online forum. Sam Rossi-Harries, Amanda Shanks and Trish O'Hara have also joined the team to help with proactive calls to members. And we're also going to be meeting Hannah Gardner. So let's move on to the first section of the meeting, where we're going to hear from 2 of our Admiral nurses, one of whom is Hannah Gardner. So Hannah has been an Admiral nurse for 3 years, previously at East and North Hertfordshire NHS Trust. And this role involved being the Trust clinical lead for dementia. She was improving patient and carer experience, supporting and training staff, and also ensuring that carers and patients felt supported during a hospital admission, which can so often be a difficult time. Hannah's passion to improve support for families living with dementia comes from losing her own mother to young onset dementia. And we're also going to hear from Rachel Thompson, who is the Consultant Admiral Nurse for Lewy body dementia. She was previously the Professional and Practice Development Lead for Admiral Nursing, and before that, the Dementia Lead at the Royal College of Nursing. She has worked as a nurse for over 30 years across a range of settings and first specialised in dementia as an Admiral nurse in 1999. Rachel has been involved in delivering education and training, supporting practice development projects, and involving people with dementia and carers, and has published articles on education and best practice in dementia, as well as co-authoring a book on dementia. We're looking forward to hearing from them.
Hello everyone, nice to meet you all. I'm Hannah Gardner. I'm the new Admiral nurse at the Rare Dementia Support Team. It's really great to be part of an amazing dementia support team. I've been an Admiral nurse for 3 years. I previously worked in a hospital environment which involved supporting staff, carers, people living with dementia, and really working on the dementia strategy of the hospital to make it more dementia friendly. My background is I'm also a general nurse. I've been nursing for over 16 years, and I've got a real passion with dementia. Professionally and personally, my own mother had a young type of dementia and had a big impact on our family. So it's really great to use my personal and professional experience to support others. If we move on to the next slide, please. Admiral nursing, I don't know if you all know what an Admiral nurse is, but I'll just briefly recap about Admiral nursing. So Admiral nursing was set up in the 90s. A family, their father had a vascular dementia and they felt that he had a lot of support, but the family were finding it really hard and struggling caring for him. So they set up Dementia UK Admiral Nursing. We're named after him. He was known as Admiral Joe. So that's where the name comes from. So Admiral nurses are up and down the country. Originally were mental health nurses, but now branch out into all the disciplines of nursing. And we all sort of provide education, leadership, development and support to colleagues and families living with dementia. So there's just over 75 now across the country and developing all the time. We have the next slide, please. This slide just really tells you generally where the Admiral nursing sits. So in community care homes, the Admiral's helpline, acute hospitals, home care, hospice and Admiral nurse. So generally that's where the Admiral nurse is. With the new role at the Rare Dementia Support Team, we can have the next slide, please. It's a brand new sort of role and fits in within the dementia support team. So I sit with the team at the Rare Dementia Support Team and we all have different areas that we focus on. So this new Admiral nurse role is really focusing on the mid to late stages of dementia. So it's about recognising the mid to late stages, the dignity of the whole family, person living with the Lewy body dementia or dementia with Lewy bodies, offering sort of person-centred care advice and also discussions on advanced care plan, which is really important through the whole journey of dementia. And with dementia with Lewy bodies, you can have lots of complex needs and every family is different and every situation is different. And it's also really important that everyone living with dementia is different as well. So to summarise, with the Admiral nurse role was really focusing also on the complex needs that families might come across due to Lewy bodies dementia. It could be that you've had Parkinson's and now have got diagnosed with dementia. Can that have a huge impact on the family and support? And this can cause a lot of complex needs for change. Things like hallucinations, issues with sleep issues, behavioural changes as well, and recognising, identifying unmet needs. And everyone reacts different to a different situation. So can be a lot of stress and anxiety that families feel living with dementia and feeling quite isolated at times. And also recognising the grief and loss that you might feel from losing someone to the condition or losing the ability to do something as well. And also complex needs could be communication with other health professionals. You're finding it hard to understand the systems and need support to talk about a situation. And transitioning to care, different care settings or hospital admissions as well. And sadly, you might need support and advice and palliative care support that is available. So every family is different, but the Admiral nurse within the Rare Dementia Support Team is open to all members. So you may not have one in your local area, but you can contact me via the Rare Dementia Support Team and I would be happy to offer support and advice to you and your family. Another aspect of the role is also focusing on post-research study support. This could be that you're taking part in some study or you've had impact study as well, and it's brought up quite a mixture of emotions and feelings, and you have to answer questions you probably haven't even thought about before. And this can have an effect on how you feel about the situation. So hopefully in the future would be a plan to have maybe one-off sessions or a number of sessions where we can go through how you felt from the study, identifying any emotions and feelings that might have brought, and just being there and listening to how that's made you feel. That's one area of the role, and also part of the role is also focusing on education. So the aim is we have a lot of animal nurses around the country, and it's about raising awareness that the Rare Dementia Support Team is here to support people living with dementia with Lewy bodies and other types of dementia, and educating those animal nurses so they can support people nationally as well, and also educating other health professionals, and also this could be people in the community or hospitals. So if you find you're coming across some health professionals that don't understand your condition, your situation, we're able to provide information to those health professionals as well to get the general knowledge of dementia improved, and recognising dementia is not just a problem with your memory, it can have other types that cause other situations, and people have different needs. So that's part of the role as well, and that will be community and hospital setting as well. So nationally we'll be able to raise awareness of the rarer types of the dementia. So next slide please. And so please, if you feel that you need support, please contact our Rare Dementia Support Team email, and I'll happily organise a telephone conversation, a Zoom meeting as well, where we can discuss if you prefer to have that sort of face-to-face contact at the moment. And hopefully in the future we'll be able to actually meet properly face-to-face and offer support that way at other group sessions as well. So please get in contact if you need support. I'm now going to hand over to Rachel, who's an animal nurse, but her role is focusing on slightly different aspects of dementia with Lewy body. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Rachel Thompson. Thank you so much, Hannah, for that introduction to animal nursing. And I have to say, I'm really delighted that Rare Dementia Support have now got an animal nurse working with them, because I think it will be a real complement to the fantastic work I think that people are doing already. So I'm here today just to give you an update, and I did present back in the summer, so some people may have heard me talking about the service when it was really at the very beginning. So I'll just give you an overview of what I've been doing and a few of the insights I've gained. So next slide, please. So really just to remind you, and just to let people who've not met before or not heard about this role, this was a 2-year project that's been funded by the Lewy Body Society, who traditionally have funded research and are very, very keen to raise awareness of Lewy body dementia, but also recognise that they felt there was a gap in terms of clinical advice and support. So I commenced in post in December 2019. I've been working alongside the Lewy Body Society and Dementia UK since. Like Hannah, I've worked for quite a number of years as an animal nurse and a long time in dementia care. So if we can go to the next slide, what I will tell you a little bit about what I did when I first started in role. I was very keen to find out where the gaps were. I did a lot of reading and looked at some of the research and connected some of the kind of experts around the country about support that's available. And I did a couple of things really. I set up some interviews with people who were the experts really. So I interviewed some families, and I also interviewed some professionals, so old age psychiatrists, neurologists, Parkinson's specialists, and asked them a number of things really. Firstly, what are the main challenges for families affected by Lewy body dementia? Asked a little bit about things like difficult symptoms, what they felt families would most benefit from in terms of support, and where were the main gaps, and lastly, how they felt the consultant animal nurse role may have the most impact. I themed some of those interviews, I analysed them, and then I also put them to a number of our animal nurses. And so the next couple of slides will just give you a little bit of information about what people told me. So next slide, please. People said, and this reflected actually both the families and the professionals, but also the animal nurses, saying that actually the main challenges, and I guess this is probably not a surprise for any of you, but there's still a lack of understanding of the condition amongst professionals, people still having problems with getting diagnoses, and sometimes poor coordination between Parkinson's services, for example, if you've got Parkinson's disease dementia, but also within memory services where people are perhaps have the cognitive symptoms appear first. And generically everybody was saying that there's a lack of support for families both getting an accurate diagnosis, but what happens then, what people often feel like they're just kind of left and abandoned. So next slide, please. One of the questions that I asked was about what were the most challenging symptoms, what things that people found most difficult to manage and cope with. This slide just gives you a little bit of insight into the things that appeared again. I suspect in this group none of these are a surprise, but what was quite interesting was some things, for example, sleep disturbance. Families reported that much more as a problem, was recognised by professionals, but not quite so frequently. The fluctuations were a real challenge, and I think, as we know, people can fluctuate from moment to moment, hour to hour, and that's very frustrating and very difficult to manage and understand at times. Certainly delusions and hallucinations can be very difficult for families, as we know, and knowing how to respond, what's the best treatment. You will see some of the other things that came up here. And there are many more, but it really was just to help me think about, well, where's the biggest need? What's the focus required? So next slide. I then asked people what they thought my role where it could have the most impact. People generally felt that there needs to be a better awareness of families' needs. Certainly a gap in terms of training. Some families were saying that, and actually professionals were saying, there's actually a wealth of information about dementia out there, but sometimes not enough. We know that the rare dementias and Lewy body dementia, although it is the kind of second most common neurodegenerative dementias, that actually it is different. And so people were saying we want something that's specific, that we can read and recognise and learn more about what's different about this type of dementia. Offering direct support was one of the things, and I'll tell you a little bit about what I've been doing around that. So I've used this really just to think about, well, how can I shape what I do? So can I have the next slide, please? So I opened up to referrals in June, and I've kind of been taking referrals via our helpline since that point. So now we've got Hannah in role. That's really good that she will become, certainly for people via the Rare Dementia Support Service, be able to have direct access. And so I'm going to be working closely with Hannah about how we can support each other. But up until now, referrals have been coming via our helpline, which is open 7 days a week and available to anybody, really, professionals, people with dementia, family carers. And so a lot of referrals people come through initial, sometimes actually finding out about how to get a diagnosis, recognising early symptoms. And I've been doing some training with the admin nurses on the helpline to help them recognise the specific symptoms that people have with Lewy body dementia. They will offer initial support and advice, but if they feel that there's something more in terms of specific advice, they're referring people on to me. And I've been offering a number of things. It is a national role anyway, but of course COVID has come along, hasn't it? And you know, we've been forced into doing things remotely. So I've been offering support via the phone and via video links. And it's a time limited intervention. But I'm being flexible because of the nature of where we're in at the moment. I'm very conscious that a lot of services have been struggling to support people out in the community. So it's a combination of things like psychoeducation, and what I mean by that is just helping people understand and recognise symptoms, giving them somebody to talk to who understands the condition. I've been also offering something called the START intervention, which you may have heard of before, which is a manualised programme around supporting family carers in particular about developing coping strategies. And I've done a little bit of couple work where the person with the dementia is able to kind of engage and join in. So next slide, please. So really just to give you where I'm up to at the moment. I've been doing a number of talks. I've been trying to raise awareness. We've got a few coming up over the next month or so. I have been doing a bit of training with the admin nurses, and I've got some more to do in early next year. As I said, I've been offering clinical support, and just to give you a flavour really, I've had about 35 referrals to date. The admin nurses and the helpline are triaging a lot of referrals, but I've been offering psychoeducation to around 29. The START programme, it's only 4 people, but I think that's often about people's ability to have the time and the capacity and the regular space really to engage with this. But it certainly has, where people have used it, they found it very helpful. And I've done some couple work with 2 couples. Very mindful at the moment that people are really struggling, and I very conscious that, as I said before, a lot of the services they're available but not quite in the same way. So I hear a lot of people very distressed, I have to say, at the moment, certainly in things around medication, understanding changes, accessing support when they need it. So doing my best remotely to try and support people in that way. There's still a lot more to do, but as I say, really looking forward to working with Hannah, and I think she'll be a great asset to the team. So I think that's it from me. If we can just go to the next slide. This is really just in addition. If people do want to find out about the helpline, here's some details about how to contact the helpline and the opening hours. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope the rest of the session goes well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I think we got cut off slightly at the end there, but thank you, Rachel, and thank you, Hannah. Those contact details, we can circulate those at the end of the webinar. It's so helpful to hear about the areas that you can provide support, and particularly the sort of the outcomes from your questionnaire. So to know the particular areas where families and professionals find challenging, and the areas where you can have some the greatest impact. So thank you very much. But we're now going to move on to hear from Alan Crawford and also from Mahoko Ogawa Higgins. So I want to tell you a little bit about Alan. Alan Crawford he's a retired freelance writer. I'm so sorry, can't speak this morning. He's a retired freelance writer who lives with his loving wife Mary in North London. They met and they fell in love in 2008, and they married in 2011, and they're blissfully happy. Alan was diagnosed in February 2017 with Alzheimer's disease, and this was subsequently changed to Lewy body dementia several months later. He has 2 daughters who live nearby, and he enjoys walking with them in his local park. Now he has written some words about his experience of living with Lewy body dementia, and his words will be read by Alicia Willoughby from Rare Dementia Support. After Alan, we're going to hear an interview between Mahoko Ogawa Higgins and Nikki Zimmerman. And I just want to tell you a little bit about both Mahoko and Nikki. Mahoko cares for her husband Roy, and has done for the last 5 years. He initially developed Parkinson's disease and then young onset Lewy body dementia in 2015. Whilst caring for Roy, she also works as an exhibition coordinator for museums and galleries. Roy is currently cared for at home by Continuing Healthcare, and he lives with Mahoko and Leo, who is a 6-year-old Yorkshire Terrier. Nikki Zimmerman, many of you will know, has been at the direct support team lead at Rare Dementia Support for the last 2 years. And she does fantastic work ensuring person-centered holistic support is available for all 2,000 Rare Dementia Support members. And this is delivered by a dedicated and knowledgeable team. Nikki has over 10 years of experience of supporting people with rare dementia and working in clinical settings in London, including in the Cognitive Disorders Clinic at Queen Square and at St George's in South London. Before coming to Rare Dementia Support, Nikki worked for the Alzheimer's Society in a variety of roles in service delivery and management, but mainly focusing on young onset, which has personally impacted her family. So looking forward to hearing first from Alan and then from Mahoko and Nikki.
About 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with dementia. I had been aware for some months that I was forgetting things a lot, so I went to see my GP, and she referred me to the hospital in North London where I live. There I did lots of memory tests, visual puzzles and so on, once a week for about 5 weeks. I remember one with pictures of suburban houses, the front doors all painted in tasteful colours. I did well with that. At the end, they showed me how I had scored. I think there were about 10 tests, each with marks out of 10. On most of them I had high scores, 8 or 9, but on 2 of them I had low scores, 2 or 3. This showed that, though my brain was generally in good working order, there were some areas where it was not in good order at all. After a few more meetings, in February 2017, I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. I was just 74. I remember afterwards sitting on a bench outside the hospital with my wife Mary and thinking how odd it all was. I knew I was getting forgetful, but I didn't feel ill. I didn't feel as if I had anything. At that time, I knew very little about dementia, and all I could think of was images of disability, lolling heads, etc., probably seen on television. This talk is a record of my pleasure and surprise at finding how different things could be. A few months after I was diagnosed, my GP noticed a slight trembling in my hands and referred me to the National Hospital for Neurology and Neurosurgery in Queen's Square in Bloomsbury. There I was seen by a consultant who asked a lot of questions, including, "How is your sense of smell?" I said that I hadn't been able to smell most things since I was about 30. "Ah," he said, "that is interesting. I have a colleague who is particularly interested in that." This was a strange turn-up for the books. In the summer of 2017, my diagnosis was changed from Alzheimer's to dementia with Lewy bodies. Dementia is a condition where the brain does not function properly. Everything we do and feel and perceive is the result of nerve cells in the brain sending messages to each other. Dementia with Lewy bodies occurs when tiny clumps of protein called Lewy bodies develop inside the brain cells. They disrupt the way the brain functions and can cause brain cells to die. In practice, I think of dementia with Lewy bodies as a mixture. It is like Alzheimer's. I get confused easily and forget things a lot. And it is like Parkinson's. I shake a bit and feel unsteady on my feet. My memories of the next couple of years are confused. Mary's are more reliable. I can remember thinking about the funny twists of language that dementia throws up. In clinical terms, dementia is a progressive disease, which means that as it goes on, it gets gradually worse. In clinical terms, dementia is a progressive disease, which means that as it goes on, it gets gradually worse. It is unpredictable, so its so-called progress is uncertain, but it doesn't turn back. There are many and wonderful palliatives, but there is no cure. I will never get better. I will just go on getting progressively worse and worse. This sounds either bitter or brave, but it is not meant to be either. I can remember the social awkwardness of having a disease which is serious, but doesn't show itself in the early stages. People don't know how to react. Sometimes they congratulate you on doing so well when you are not doing anything except sliding imperceptibly downhill. Sometimes they're skeptical. "Oh, I forget things too, just like you. You're just getting old," which is true. I can remember sitting bolt upright in bed one morning and thinking, I must finish the book. I had been working for ages on a book about arts and crafts movements in England. I wanted to write about a dozen short life stories about William Morris and other designers and craftsmen whom I thought important. No, whom I think of as my friends. Some chapters were finished, others were in draft, but there was still a lot to do. And then, in the summer of 2018, I began to panic at the thought of not being able to finish the book. I was scared of the outside world and began to behave oddly. I made plans to clear all my files out of my office. I seemed to act as if my life was almost over. I can't remember much about it now. Mary remembers more. I talked to the doctors at Queen's Square and they diagnosed anxiety, which can be quite common in people with Lewy bodies. I was referred to the professor of neuropsychiatry at Queen's Square, who prescribed an antidepressant called duloxetine. She said I should come back in a few months and tell her how I was feeling. When I came back, I told her that I felt much better. She is not a little girl, but she jumped up and clapped her hands as if she was. Wonderful, wonderful. I got the impression that prescribing antidepressants is a rather hit-and-miss affair, I suppose because people are all different. Since then, I have slowly come to feel that I am standing in a sunlit landscape of happiness, at peace, relaxed, a bit muddled, but happy. I have not always been happy. In 1968, I married Jane, whom I had met at university. We had 2 children, Sarah and Kate, who are now talented, capable parents and professional women. As a family, we settled in Birmingham, where both Jane and I taught in the Polytechnic. In 1978, Jane was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she died in 1985. For some years after that, my life was an emotional mess. The girls were 13 and 15 when their mother died, and I was not much good as a single parent. By the early 90s, I was living by myself in North London, working freelance and seeing a therapist on and off for about 20 years. Those were not happy years. But now, much of that has changed. Jane is a constant and kindly presence in our lives. I love her now as I loved her then. Mary and I only live a stone's throw from Alexandra Park, with its views over much of London. It is a blessing. A year or 2 ago, I used to walk across the park and back in the afternoon, a distance of about 2 miles. Now I can't imagine it by myself, so either Sarah or Kate, both of whom live near the park, come with me, and it's a good chance to talk. And my life is happy, even hilarious. I talk to myself, little phrases, advertising jingles, bits of poetry, pieces from Monty Python. I think I have always done this, and I imagine everybody does, but in the last year or 2, it seems to have all got a bit more loony. I was brought up a Catholic, and the other day I woke up with the phrase Dominus Tecum going round in my head. This is the Latin that the priest used to say in Catholic churches when giving out communion. The Lord be with you. Only now it had gotten muddled up in my head with Cadbury's take 'em and they cover them with chocolate. Words playing with words. I work as a writer, though not a very effective one, and it is words that perhaps give me the most pleasure. Beautiful, slippery, cheeky, subtle, surprising words. Because I have Parkinson's, my hands shake and tremble a lot, so it is almost impossible to write clearly by hand, and my typing is chock full of mistakes. So I have bought a piece of software called Dragon. Voice recognition is the word for what it does. I say what I want to write into a microphone, and it appears on the screen, without me having to touch the keyboard. At least that is what's supposed to happen. In fact, probably because I am a bit of a ninny with computers, it often turns up something quite different. I start an email with "Dear Annette," and it writes "My dear Tony," as if I was writing a creepy message to Mr. Blair. At the moment I am copying my father's wartime letters to my mother. In April 1940, he wrote, "I am still very much in favor of my new photograph of you. I think you look damn fine." But the Dragon wrote, "I am still very much in favor of my new photograph of you. I think you look terrifying." What can you do? It's infuriating, but it is also endearing, crazy, wonderful. I just bow down, kiss the keyboard, and wipe out the words. It probably sounds as if I live in a state of drug-induced euphoria, and in a sense I do. But I also want to say that I am at peace. My brain may be under constant siege from angry Lewy bodies, but I can carry on an intelligent conversation as long as it doesn't have to do with Brexit or getting the boiler mended. And I can write, as I am doing now. This is what I call work, and it has always been one of the great pleasures of my adult life. Of course, I know that it cannot last. I am, I think, in the early stages of dementia, but I know that there is worse to come. I can almost feel Dr. Louis's naughty little bodies working away when I'm cleaning my teeth or watching the news. I laugh a lot, but I don't think I will have the last laugh. I don't know when that will be, or what it will be like, and I think I am right in saying that the doctors don't know exactly either. I don't think I am particularly worried about it, but I do worry about the weight that will fall on my family when I lose my marbles. In 2008, I met and fell in love with Mary. We are an odd couple. I am a middle-class, expensively and foolishly educated at a public school, and with a voice that Mary says sounds like Pathé News. Mary is the child of a happy Catholic working-class family in Limerick. She moved to London when she was 20 and worked in an office. We got married in 2011, and when I think of how we met and fell in love, I am full of wonder. It was and is so quiet, so ordinary, so deep. And so you see, the happy landscape in which I live is not a drug-induced wonderland, though the medication, to use a politer word, has a lot to do with it. It has roots. It grows out of the care and expertise of my GP, my therapist, and the doctors and nurses at Queen Square, out of the love and support of my friends and family, especially Sarah and Kate and their children, and, above all, out of the deep, strange, and abiding love of the girl from Limerick who has so changed my life. It is not just duloxetine that makes me happy. It is Mary's care, her courage, and her love. In dementia, there are always two people involved, the patient and the carer. Two people, the same timescale, but two quite different journeys. Alan's story started in 2017 when he was diagnosed with dementia. Mine started a few years earlier when we fell in love and got married. His story goes up and down in mood, but the medical side of it gets progressively worse. My mood goes up and down too, but I hope and pray that my love will always keep me strong. I keep the house clean, I worry about his children and grandchildren, I do the shopping, I do the finances, I put up with his vagueness and forgetfulness, and with his growing conviction that we live on 2 floors when we only live on 1. My life is made narrow by his illness, and I know it will get narrower. I sometimes say, "Can we go to Australia?" And he smiles, and we go to Whitstable instead. I accept all these things because I love him and he is my husband, and I love his children and my children love him. Dementia is hard on the sufferer, and people can see that. Dementia is also hard on the carer, and people don't always see that.
Good morning. It's lovely to be here with you all this morning. For those of you who have not met me before, my name's Nikki Zimmerman and I'm the Direct Support Team Lead, and our team looks after all 2,000 plus of our members, and we're here for all your support needs to help with any navigation into getting a diagnosis right through the whole of the journey. And we have lots of members who we help in sort of every step of the way. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined this morning by Mahoko, and I've known Mahoko for a long time now, and she has very kindly come along today to share her story with us and give some tips and advice, and I hope you'll really get an awful lot from this because it's such a valuable resource. So thank you so much, Mahoko, for joining me this morning.
Thank you, Nikki, for having me today. I'm delighted to be able to give you some little tips or story that I'm building up for many years.
Thank you. So can we start? Can you tell me a little bit of the background about your husband, Roy, who's living with dementia with Lewy bodies?
Yes, Roy was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease initially in August 2015. And then a few months later, he was diagnosed with the young onset of Lewy body dementia. Until he was working few years after, but he was working as a deputy managing director of a technology company. So he had a very, very busy professional life.
That's fantastic. So can you sort of tell me how Lewy bodies dementias affected you two as a couple?
Yes, as a couple, that the initially we didn't know what was going on, but definitely there was something behind going on before 2015. So we are puzzling so many areas, and then being seen so many different types of specialists, therapies, anything that we can think of. So by the time diagnosis came in 2015, we are kind of strangely, we are kindly relieved that they are where we stand. And then by that stage, that the Roy was quite understanding that he has got those Parkinson's disease and also Lewy body dementia, because he definitely felt that there's something wrong with him. So beginning that it was, I think before the diagnosis was tough, but after that we quite accepting the reality quite well, and because we know that where we stand, so we start looking into lots of options that how we can live with the Parkinson's disease and also Lewy body dementia. So we becoming like a team more, and then we started doing things more together, and then also we going out to see lots of people that they are relating to Parkinson's disease or Lewy body dementia. So we are quite upfront about our situation.
And because I've known you for a long time, you and Roy have always been really very social. You've always gone out a lot. You've done lots and lots of activities together. And it must have been a really, really difficult year this year, because, you know, we went into lockdown first of all in March.
Yes.
We're now in lockdown again, but all through the year we've been very socially restricted. How's this impacted on you two?
It was, to be honest, it was really devastating for us, because regularly we, Roy and myself, go out to Parkinson's exercise class 3 times a week. And then also Roy goes to table tennis with his carer once a week. And then on the top, we had other social activities together. So we had quite full on until lockdown in March. And then suddenly it stopped without warning. And then it's not our decision. Somebody asked, you know, somebody put us into this situation. And then we are really, really struggling, because socially we are quite active, and also physically Roy needs to do lots of exercise. So initially we are only allowed to go out for 1 hour for exercise, and that wasn't good enough. So unfortunately Roy's condition deteriorating slowly since lockdown. And then now at this moment he is admitted to the hospital.
You said he's in hospital at the moment. He's had a few hospital admissions this year as well, hasn't he?
Yes.
This has brought up quite a few concerns for you, hasn't it?
Yes. Nature of the Lewy body is, as you may know, that there is like a stage of plateau, and then dips down quite sharply, and the plateau and dips down quite sharply. So since the lockdown in March, we experienced this pattern quite a lot. And then every time Roy goes into hospital, and then he deteriorates. And then first of all, that physically he is definitely getting frail and weaker, and also unfortunately cognitively getting deteriorated as well. But I think the more importantly that his quality of life is changing quite dramatically. He, as I said, he's quite a sociable person, and then we go out, and then even like a hospital, even like at home during the lockdown, it's so restricted. So he was really, really frustrated that they're not being able to see people or not being able to do things. So the even the hospital environment, unfortunately, there's no stimulation. So that was really tough as well. But at the same time, from my point of view, that I was not allowed to visit him unless he's in the A&E. And also first admission he had in August. That was to be honest, that was the toughest one because he had a sepsis and then also a chest infection, and then that's really taken his lots of abilities away. And then sadly, that at that point that I was told by doctors that they are not going to resuscitate him if something happened. And then that was because it's COVID, I couldn't do that kind of meeting on a face-to-face. So they actually did it on the Zoom session. And then luckily I had a young onset dementia support worker kindly sitting next to me. So the two of us just listening to that conversation with the doctors the other side, and then there are like 4 or 5 doctors and then 2 nurses. So they are like a big team telling us this news, and that was quite tough to take in.
It sounds it's quite intimidating for you.
It was because I didn't expect that this coming, because we throughout this journey we have always have a good relationship with our consultants, other specialist nurses, and also other support workers, and then we never ever been in this situation before. And then suddenly, without warning, this happened on a Zoom session, and then doctors and nurses, we have never met them, and then obviously they don't know Roy for a long time, and they're suddenly delivering quite big news to me. And then that was quite emotional. It's really like psychologically, emotionally difficult to take in.
Yeah, it sounds like it, and it just sounds like sort of such a big sort of impact sort of now on your journey. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, there's been lots going on, sort of obviously with Roy sort of going into hospital and coming out and sort of care, and so much focus on Roy, which, you know, deservedly so, very much so. But you're his carer, you're his main carer, aren't you? And you know, how have you felt sort of this effect on you? I mean, we're in a stage where everybody is feeling very socially isolated, yes. And these huge, enormous things are going on around you at the moment. And do you feel that sort of you're slightly sort of overlooked as a carer here?
I think that's the case, definitely. To be honest, that is the case from the beginning of this journey, because always people ask how is Roy, and everything. I mean, he deserves that attention, but at the same time that I'm the sole carer. We don't have any much backup from families, because I'm from Tokyo, and then my whole entire family lives in Tokyo, and then Roy has got family, but they have got their own lives, and then they live different areas. So it's difficult to coordinate everything together. So I have to think that we are just on our own. So everything is on my shoulder. So that's quite tough to carry that responsibility on my own, and nobody asks you, how are you? And then, but I think because it's our nature that we always try to go out to somewhere, and then we happen to see so many different peoples, and that helps me quite a lot, so that we can share the like a story. And then I was in tears, but actually ended up with laughing. That sort of like a sad story can turn into laughable story. That's like quite important. And then also we have a very good network with the medical profession, which cares me as well. Now we have got Roy has got GP in the community. Now Roy has got GP, Parkinson nurse, dementia nurse, district nurse, and also palliative care nurse as well. So they are now saying that they are obviously paying attention to Roy, but at the same time, they clearly said that they would like to much support to me. But if that's happened from the beginning, I don't feel that I would be isolated. And then also, obviously, I get to know you and your team, so that the Area Dementia Care and also St. George's Young Onset Support Group, those kind of, and also the Parkinson's UK, their support group, they are very, very helpful. So, but you have to reach out. They're not going to feed you. So you have to be proactive, try to get help. And you have to clearly accept the fact that you need help. You cannot be on your own, because there is so much you can do on your own.
Yeah, it's like a full-time job, even just sort of managing all these contacts, let alone getting the support from them.
Yes.
You do an absolutely amazing job. And I'm always absolutely in total admiration for you, Mahoko, and your resilience to what's going on, how you take it all in your stride, but also your resourcefulness, sort of how you kept activities going, and you brought so much joy to every day of Roy's sort of life, and it just continues. So, do you have any tips for anybody watching today of going forward? How to incorporate everything into everyday life?
Yes, I think tip is definitely that we accepted the fact quite well from the beginning. Roy was in denial about his diagnosis. Roy was quite accepting, and also I was quite accepting as well. It's very sad. It's very, very tough. But since we crossed that hurdle, that we know where we're going, so that it's easier to get help. I think you said that my resilience and resourcefulness, they are the friends. They are two sides of the coin. So if you are resourceful, you can be resilient. And then if you're resilient, you can be resourceful. And then good point, I always said that because until recently, or until a few years ago, that we are paying everything privately. Roy had a private medical insurance. We went to see the doctor privately. Everything was private. But one big advice from private physiotherapist was really good. She said to me, Mihoko, Roy can survive at this moment, with me, and then that's fine. But you never know what's going to happen next. So talk to your GP and then get the help locally in the community. That will benefit hugely. And then that was exactly the case that I becoming resourceful, because GP put me into touch with Parkinson nurse, occupational therapist, physiotherapist, speech and language therapist straight away. So suddenly we are surrounded by specialists, and then gave us lots of information, and also lots of areas or places that we can go, and also lots different types of trainings, and then that was so valuable. And also we took action quite quickly from the beginning, therefore that they can facilitate help easily, rather than we needed help now desperately. So I always say that they get help from the beginning, even you don't feel you don't need it. It's good to know that who you can get help, and the when, and the how, and then so that you can be well covered by different people. And also sometimes you can be very emotional or frustrated, but I always said to myself, cool head, warm heart. So that so you have to have your cool head to make things happen. You cannot emotionally download your complaint to somebody. They don't want that. If you want to get clear help, you have to have a cool head and then explain why you need help, when you need help, how you need help. So I think that's that's the key, my day-to-day life.
Brilliant. Thank you. What wise words. What wise words for everybody. Yeah. And, you know, get your care planning sorted, because that's what you need. Thank you so much, Mahoko. It is an absolute joy and pleasure to support you. And, you know, I hope that we'll be supporting you for a long time sort of going forward. Thank you so much for today. You're going to be on our panel today for the Q&A session. So if anybody has any questions for Mahoko, get them sent in and we'll be ready to answer them shortly. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mahoko.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahoko and Nikki. What a moving story and such important messages there. I love that, a warm heart and a cool head, and being ready to ask for help. So thank you so much, and please do send questions to Mahoko. You have so much wisdom. I also want to apologise. I think a lot of people struggle to hear Alan Crawford, and there was a problem on our end with the sound. I'm so sorry about that. You should be able to access this recording, and it should be audible on the recording on YouTube. And if we find that it's still not, that we still can't hear it, then we'll send the transcript, because his words were so meaningful and valuable, and we really do want to share what he shared with us. So we're going to move on to the next section now, which is going to be some preview clips from a film called Sense of a Presence by Simon Ball. Now, many of you will know Simon Ball. He presented at our meeting in May, and some of you have interacted even a bit more closely with him. He's an award-winning filmmaker and animator, and he's been working with us to produce a short film on the experiences of living with Lewy body dementia. And he's interviewed several people from this group as part of this. So we heard some of their voices and some of your voices in May, and we may hear some of these now. So we heard the audio clips in May. Today, he's going to share a preview, some of the animations that he's made for this film, and he's also going to reflect on the process of making these animations. At the end of the webinar, we're going to be sending you a short questionnaire on the clips, because we really want to know what you think about them. What's your your thoughts and your emotions, your sort of feelings about how do they make you feel about perhaps your own clips, or about your own experiences, and whether these animations reflect what you experience or other things that you've seen. So I'm going to hand you over now to Simon Ball.
Good morning, everybody. It's fantastic to see you today. We are here this morning with Simon Ball, who I'm delighted he's joined us today. Simon's a fantastic filmmaker. Many of you have met Simon last time or in person. He's been working with the team here to produce some fantastic animation for Lewy body's dementia. Good morning, Simon.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. So I'll just introduce the project that I've been working on, which is an animated film that aims to bring to life people's experiences of living with dementia with Lewy bodies, with a particular focus on visual hallucinations and other visual vision-related symptoms of DLB. I've been working with, the film's funded by AI UK, and I've been working with Ramona Vile. So the idea has always been for the film to be led by people living with dementia with Lewy bodies, and through this support group, I've met several people and completed many hours of interviews with people with DLB and their carers and partners, some of whom I believe are in attendance today. Over the past several months, whilst I've been locked down at home, I've been listening to these conversations and editing them down into a short film that, as I mentioned, focuses on visual hallucinations, misperceptions, and visual symptoms of DLB, but also that I hope gives an overview of people's experiences of living with DLB more broadly. So at the last support group meeting, I shared some of these audio clips, and today I want to share some of the visual material and animation that I've been developing. At this stage, it's very much a work in progress, so some of the animations are a little bit rough and a little bit clunky, but I hope it gives you an idea of the kind of style and atmosphere that I'm trying to create. So I think without further ado, we can play the clip.
I'd have a sense of somebody here, somebody kind of coming alongside me.
And quite often felt almost like a presence.
Just as if there was somebody there.
People going past the kitchen would be like a shadow, you know.
They always seemed to be in the lavatory when he wanted to go to the lavatory.
But I answered the door because I think there's somebody there, you know.
Her brain would create people.
People in the house, many people in the house at a time.
She would look around her as if she were being crowded.
Their faces weren't very detailed and they were often turning away from him.
He says he doesn't know who they are because they don't have faces.
I can see them now coming here. Butterflies, or it's like little plastic white balls, very small. You must, I'm not going stupid, you know. I can see them.
I would suggest that he tried to touch them.
Doesn't work. Because I try to catch them and it goes through and just disappears, you know. It's definitely there. They were showering down on his head. Expect your clothes to be full of them, but you don't really feel them as such.
Maybe they're the Lewy bodies. Little blobs of protein that have been visualised.
Well, I have the sort of hallucinations of the rabbits that I saw separately on a number of occasions tended to be larger, more majestic. I mean, what I tend to experience is narrow tunnel vision almost, where, you know, as I chase the image moves and then it's gone. They had a cartoonish quality to them, which made them exceptional.
He described them as fluffy bunnies, and they didn't seem to disturb him. He said they weren't threatening. It conjures up something friendly and comforting.
She very seldom smiled when she became ill.
And then suddenly a light bulb will come on and he'll say, "Ah, you're my petal, aren't you today?"
For a moment, for a few minutes, she was absolutely bang on her normal self.
That's fantastic, absolutely amazing. It always amazes me that people talk about their symptoms and you manage to get these animations, these visuals up, which really describes what people are actually going through. And I think that for us, this is an absolute amazing, you know, resource for people to understand their condition, families to understand, but also as an educational resource for professionals. Are you pleased with how you're sort of getting the results from this?
Yeah, I am actually quite happy with how it's coming along. It has been quite a struggle. I mean, there always is. I think as an animator, I'm very often working sort of in a dark room for long hours. It's very much a sort of lonely pursuit. I sort of kind of compare it to the cliche of a lonely writer in a way. So you kind of disappear off into I mean, with this project, I keep saying into a little rabbit hole because there is this amazing story in the animation where one of the interviewees talks about seeing a rabbit. And yeah, you kind of disappear into this very sort of individual space where I'm working on my own, but obviously at the same time, I'm very much working with other people's stories. And there's kind of maybe a strong ethical question about how much creative license I have to take this, I mean the rabbit in particular, to take that on a journey and be creative with it, and how much should I try and stay very real to that person's description of it. So there's this balance between, yeah, trying to build a story and trying to be honest to the material. And I think that also translates to, you know, sort of the crux of the projects and all the work that I've done with dementia. At the core of it is maybe trying to sort of raise awareness of these conditions, and therefore I'm also thinking like what grabs an audience, what'll draw someone in, and that sometimes isn't always the most sort of common experiences. Maybe it's something quite unique. There's this kind of game or sort of line that I'm trying to walk between, yeah, just telling a story that I believe is honest to DLB, but also trying to create a film that draws people in at the same time. So I'm working away in a little dark space and having all these sort of fairly quite big questions. And it's really good today, I suppose, because this is my opportunity to come out of my little dark space and share some of it and invite some feedback, which is a little bit intimidating, but I think very, very helpful in the long run.
Oh, we're delighted that you're out of your dark room with us today and sharing this experience. Have you learnt a lot about dementia with Lewy bodies along the way?
Yeah, very much so. This project sort of started quite quickly. I feel like from the moment I met the team at Alzheimer's Research UK and linked with Ramona and then got the funding, I feel like the wheels have all turned quite fast. So I've had to, it's been quite a steep learning curve, and I think I still am learning about dementia with Lewy bodies. I think one of the biggest things that I have learned is how broad the symptoms are of DLB. I feel like I think with every kind of dementia that it's very hard to define. Like people's experiences are often very subjective, but you can often say that this is like a language dementia, or this is a visual dementia, or this is based around memory. Whereas I found with dementia with Lewy bodies, you know, I came into it, I was talking to people about visual hallucinations, but it's kind of opened out into this very wide set of symptoms. And somebody said, it was probably Ramona who described it as a multisensory condition. It doesn't really just affect one thing, it seems to affect everywhere. And there are many symptoms that I've heard people talk about that I could have put in other films that I'm working on, because those symptoms seem to describe or are very similar to the symptoms of other types of dementia. So it's been really challenging just to kind of to try and include everything. It's been very difficult. So I think more and more I'm actually sort of reducing it to focus on visual hallucinations and the visual aspects of it. But I've definitely been I definitely tried and spoken to people about the movement symptoms, problems with sort of cognition and you know, things like understanding perception of time, counting and numbers, language issues, memory issues. I mean, I feel like that doesn't even scratch the surface of the broad range of symptoms. So I'd say that was the biggest thing that I've learned, and that's been a real challenge. I mean, even just focusing on visual hallucinations themselves, there are so many stories that I've had to leave on the cutting room floor, and so many anecdotes about people's experiences in everyday life, and sort of kind of almost sometimes fantastical moments that haven't made it into the film, that actually could almost be films in their own right. That it has been really challenging to condense all of this down. I think the other aspect that I'm still learning about, and this is maybe something that Ramona might wrap me on the knuckles for, but I'm still getting my head around the science of it, and I sort of haven't really put this in the film so much. Like I haven't really talked about what a Lewy body is, or the scientific processes, the pathology, I think you might call it, the actual sort of particle processes in the brain. I haven't really got into, and I actually found that when I spoke to people, one or two people absolutely did have the science very sort of locked down and clear in their head, but I would say most people sort of hadn't really sort of gone down that road with their thinking. There was sort of more of a feeling of dealing with everyday problems rather than trying to come up with sort of a Wikipedia dictionary definition of what DLB is. And I hope that that kind of comes across in the film. It focuses more on people's experiences and kind of how carers kind of react and relate to these experiences. And maybe in some way there's sort of an element of mystery to some of these experiences, which I would assume that the scientists attending would maybe turn their noses up a little bit. But I think there is a sort of sense of mystery to this condition in people's experiences. It's often very hard to define what somebody is seeing, even if they can give you a very detailed description of it. When you start to dig deeper, sometimes that really detailed description kind of fades away, and yeah, that's been a really interesting process of like how do I visualize something that somebody is seeing but they're not seeing, and maybe in some ways I'm still working that out, and I'm still playing with that. Even through the animations that you might see, I might choose to obscure them a little bit more, or even make them a bit more vivid. And that's sort of a game that I'm playing with it.
It's brilliant. It's amazing. I mean, the animation that we've seen today, I'm really looking forward to seeing the end product of this. But no, I think, you know, we're just so delighted that you've brought this to life for sort of the whole of the group here. You've got some questions for this survey at the end. Do you want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the questions that we've put in, I mean, really relate to everything that I was talking about, which probably, if anyone's like me, went in one ear and out the other a little bit. But yeah, I think there's 5 questions, but there's plenty of space for free text. I think there is sort of did you like the animation on a scale of 1 to 4? But I'm really interested. I hope that people can find a bit of time to just jot down some notes and don't feel too pressured. I'm just really interested to know how people really related to these animations, and whether they saw their own experiences in them, or whether they perhaps learned something new. I'm also really interested if people felt that they didn't relate to the animations, or perhaps they didn't feel that they worked to describe their experiences of DLB. So yeah, be honest and don't hold back. And yeah, we're really looking forward to seeing what people have to say.
Thank you, Simon. So if you've got any questions, Simon will be on the panel, but also we would be delighted if you could fill in the survey. It's going to be so helpful for Simon going forward. Thank you again for your time this morning, Simon, and thank you again for your amazing animation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Simon and Nikki, and thank you for those beautiful animations. I mean, I think you really brought to life the stories and words that we've heard. And we also, as Simon has said, we want to hear what you think. Do they reflect how you feel? And did you like the animations? So then the last section of the webinar is a question and answer section, and we've run over slightly. We're very happy to go to 11:40 to give us a chance to answer as many questions as we can. So we'll say that we'll go to 11:40, and I'm going to hand over now to our research fellow, Angelica Zarkali, who will chair the Q&A session with all the panelists that you've heard from today.
Everyone, it's great to see you. So we have a great panel, so we'll have a few questions, but before we go to them, I actually have a short message from Esther. So if there are any people who would value peer support from Lewy Body, please get in touch with Lewy Bodies UK, and we will be sending out the contact email after the meeting. So now if I just ask all our panel members to turn their video feeds on so we can see you, and then I'll crack on with some questions. Perfect, thank you everyone. So I think I have the first question for Ramona. So what is your opinion on prescribing levodopa to help with the Parkinson's elements of DLB, and whether there are any negative concerns about using this drug?
So that's a great question, and Simon was talking about Lewy body being a multisensory, and it's multi-system, so it affects different systems. And one of the systems that it affects is movement. So levodopa can be very helpful for movement, but it also can have side effects that will affect thinking and memory. So, and one of the real challenges of kind of managing Lewy body dementia is that there's a real balance that you need to be very kind of gentle and careful with any medications, because the very treatments that we might want to use for the motor symptoms can worsen some of the cognitive symptoms. So I think that's why it's quite important that whoever looks after you is somebody who looks after lots of patients with Lewy body dementia, whether they're a neurologist or a geriatrician or a psychiatrist. And also that there isn't a sort of one answer for everybody. And the final part of that is to say that all treatment should be sort of start low, go slow. So we'd use very low doses, see how somebody's doing, see if there's an improvement. If it makes things worse, it might help the movement, but if it makes the thinking and memory worse, then you might need to lower it.
Perfect. So then should we move on to a question for Mikako? Actually, I just want to pass along a lot of compliments for your interview as well from a lot of people in the comments. But also a question, how have you adapted the way you love?
I think we are don't have a plans, just see how it goes, because I think flexibility is a key. And then because as you know that the condition fluctuates so often, and then you just can't have a plan, sticking a strong plan. So see how it goes, and also if those plans don't work, I decided not to get depressed because I did my best to cope. So that's my strategy.
Fair enough. Great. So going back to you, Hannah. So there's two questions actually, but they're quite related. So how can people manage frustration when they're not sure how much the person with Lewy body disease can or cannot do, and should they continue to encourage people to engage with activities, or just allow them to sit in a chair all day if that's where they feel safe?
I think managing frustration is really important as a carer for someone with dementia, and recognising that you feel that way, and also being aware of what you're sort of expecting the person with dementia to be doing, and also things like promoting independence is really important, and activities, keeping that person stimulated and making sure that by independence, giving them something to do. You might get frustrated because they can't do something anymore, but focusing on the positive, giving them a task around the house that promotes independence, and they feel included as well and not excluded from sort of in the family, in the unit. And also recognising there is a sense of loss and grief that a carer can feel, and the frustration that you feel that you remember the person being able to do something and now they can't, and recognising that that feeling, that anger could actually is a symptom of grief and loss, because you're sense that feeling of loss that person used to be able to do and can't do anymore. And also tips like when you're asking or getting frustrated with someone to do something, about what time of day you're asking them to do them. Are they better in the morning, getting them to do that task and engaging in the morning, than in the evening, where people are more prone to sundowning, getting more tired and restless? So it's about recognising that you feel frustrated in the time when you're engaging with the person as well. And also things like light and sound. If you're trying to engage and getting frustrated with someone, it's the external environment as well might be affecting and causing frustration too. So it's always important to promote independence and keep someone active, especially during the COVID and the restrictions that we have as well. It's really important.
Great, thank you. And actually, since you mentioned sundowning, a question for Rachel, how would you suggest people to manage worsening confusion in the evenings when carers are also quite tired and want to relax?
Yeah, so Hannah picked up on this. I think sundowning is something that happens for a lot of people. Lots of people get tired towards the end of the day, and we don't really quite know beyond the people getting tired why people seem to get more agitated and restless. But just some tips really are thinking about, is the person kind of keeping active during the day? I know sometimes, and of course it's very normal to have little cat naps, but if somebody's doing it a lot, then by the time they get to the evening, it's quite possible that suddenly they're up and ready to go, when as a carer you're starting to get very tired. The other thing is about changing of the lighting, which we know happens particularly around this time of year. So sometimes even trying things like just closing the curtains a little bit before it gets dark, so that perhaps people, especially people who've got kind of visual perceptual difficulties, the difficulties people can have in terms of seeing shadows, it's trying to work out why somebody's agitated is the hardest part, I think. Beyond those things, I think trying to find things that are relaxing, that can work. Sometimes it's a bit of trial and error, so maybe trying things like music can help. Engaging somebody in an activity that's perhaps not too taxing for them, but allows you as a carer to have a bit of time and space just to kind of start relaxing a bit yourself. But yeah, it's a difficult thing to manage.
Thank you. And then if we move on to another question for Ramona. So spatial awareness and misperception are issues associated with Lewy body, as we've heard. So is it worth consulting a neuro-ophthalmologist specifically for that?
So that's an interesting question. So absolutely right that spatial awareness and visual problems can be an issue in Lewy body. I think whether you need to seek extra support from a neuro-ophthalmologist, I think it depends on the individual and depends on what those symptoms are. Sometimes it's helpful to find out if there's actually a problem in the eye itself. So for an ophthalmologist to check, are there cataracts, for example, that if they could be treated, then that might help some of the symptoms. So it can be, depending on exactly what the symptoms are. And what often, what I found is quite often I do refer, and then the answer comes back that there isn't a problem, and then we start to address it by trying to manage some of the thinking and memory problems, which actually sometimes can improve with some of the treatments, such as like donepezil and rivastigmine can sometimes improve some of those symptoms.
And kind of on a similar note, so if people were to refer and get extra opinions, how do you manage a lot of different specialists giving different information? For example, people suggested that they have been receiving contradicting information from a neurologist and psychiatrist, and they're kind of stuck in the middle. So
that's so difficult. And this is what one of the things about Lewy body dementia that's so challenging is that it sort of sits between specialties. It's challenging at the beginning. So for the diagnosis, sometimes people find that they present to different specialists, or there might be exactly as you've described in that question, that you're managed by a neurologist and a psychiatrist, or maybe an ophthalmologist as well. It's very difficult when people are giving different opinions. So, I mean, I think as far as possible, it's so important to try and keep things joined up. So we try and do that with our service. We're not perfect, but we try to. I mean, one way perhaps is to try to encourage the specialists to talk to each other. So perhaps to provide them each with each other's address, so that when they do write a letter, that at least they're copied in. And actually, I think this is I think Mahoko, in your interview, you made such an important point about asking for help. So this is one where actually, if people are giving conflicting advice, speaking up and saying, look, I'm hearing one thing from the neurologist, one thing from the psychiatrist, you need to work together, because that's not helpful for anybody if you're getting differing advice. And sometimes the other challenge here is that there's not always one answer. So when it seems like it's conflicting, sometimes it's because there's more than one answer, and sometimes you need to try different things. But I definitely agree that you don't want to try them both at the same time. So trying to keep it joined up as far as you can.
Perfect. And a question for Rachel, actually, it's quite a difficult one, I think. So regarding managing behavioural issues, including kind of persistent screaming, which is not kind of they're not associated with any treatable factors or kind of aggression and hitting family members? What can they do? What can people do to address this other than medication?
Okay, so it's a really, as you say, it's quite a tricky question. I often think when somebody's behaviour changes in whatever way, it's trying to work out what's happening for them. It might be a change in their condition, but sometimes things like agitation or people having outbursts of screaming or shouting, it's an expression of need of some kind or other. And the difficult challenge is trying to find out how to meet that need or how to kind of offer some comfort and reassurance. So, for example, if somebody's screaming and shouting, there's different ways of approaching it, but I often think about kind of going through a little checklist. So, for example, are they in pain? And, you know, is it because maybe they can't express that pain in the same way if their communication's been affected? Sometimes people communicate in different ways, and acting out can be a way of saying, I'm uncomfortable. Is it a sense of what we call a kind of an emotional need, that somebody's feeling a bit lost, isolated, frightened, fearful? We've talked a lot today about hallucinations and delusions and how distressing they can be. So is somebody just kind of trying to express something going on and they don't understand what that is? There isn't always a magic solution. I think it's back to the old kind of trial and error. And actually picking up on something that Mahoka was saying, it's really quite important, is about adjusting our expectations. And Hannah also said about thinking about this person is changing, and that's very distressing to see, but can we offer some kind of comfort? We might not be able to take away what's happening to them, but can we offer some comfort, and finding what works for that person? So it might be something soothing, it might be reducing the stimulus, there might be too much noise going on, trying something that helps calm them down, a familiar piece of music, holding their hand. Going beyond that, sometimes there are some research studies that say having a trial of analgesias, because sometimes we can't tell if somebody's in pain, and actually a lot of studies have shown that have a trial of very kind of low level painkillers actually can reduce a lot of agitation and distress. So it's going through a series of different things, but monitoring them. I think what Ramona was saying was really important as well, is that try not to try everything all at once. So try something, see if it works, try something else. There may not always be a perfect solution, but and ask for help. Yeah, ask for help and advice. Hope that answers the question in some way.
Thank you. And just a follow-up for Ramona from the question regarding levodopa from Terry, who essentially is asking who at the end of the day should be monitoring the motor coordination problems, because they experience the same problems about psychiatry team and neurology team not working together. So who should be monitoring motor coordination problems when starting dopamine medications?
Yeah, so lovely to see you here, Terry. It's lovely that we can actually see some of the people who are here. So for the motor symptoms, usually that would be the neurologist, so monitoring the response to levodopa, often with the support of a Parkinson's nurse as well, and very much sort of in conversation with you and with you and Jerry. So depending on how the symptoms are going for the motor side, but also bearing in mind that you'll be thinking as well about thinking memory issues. And in some ways, you'll be most sensitive to how things are. You both will know how he's doing. So, I mean, it is difficult, but I think that's a good point, that the neurologist will tend to focus on the motor symptoms and the psychiatrist more on the cognitive symptoms. If it's possible to get them to copy letters to each other, then that's helpful, and to try and make changes slowly, one at a time, and sort of very sort of small changes, because actually people can be quite sensitive to large changes.
Perfect. And I think we have time for probably one or two more questions. So a question on accessing research and support for Lewy body from different areas of the UK, specifically Scotland. So I think, Ramona, if you could touch on the research part, and then Nikki, maybe you can answer about the support from rare dementia in terms of UK-wide or London versus England.
Great. So I'm thrilled that people are interested in taking part in research, and obviously we're carrying out a lot of our research in London, and I mentioned at the beginning that there's a couple of research programs that we're doing. One of them will be based in London with an MRI scan, but actually one aspect is we're going to be doing remotely, that people can take part from anywhere in the country. So if people are interested and they're a little bit further away, you can still get in contact with us. And of course, it's not just us. There are other Lewy body researchers, many of whom we work with and we collaborate with and we learn from. So there's an excellent group in Cambridge led by John O'Brien, and the Newcastle group led by Professor John Paul Taylor. And the Lewy Body Society are a very good organisation that are funding research and also can point you to research that might be happening a bit more local to you. So I think taking part in research, if you can, is a wonderful way to sort of be part of the community, and in some ways also to take a little bit of control as well. So if you find it to be something that's meaningful and helpful, then we're really grateful to you if you're able to take part.
Perfect. And Nikki, if you don't mind just mentioning what support there is available from the Rare Dementia Support Group around the UK.
The Rare Dementia support, so we support everybody sort of in the sort of UK and internationally. We've got quite a lot of international members as well now, but obviously with sort of the pandemic at the moment, a lot of people aren't being able to meet physically, so everything is online. So we have got our support groups. We've got a great team of support workers who do one-to-one support, and we buddy people up, and we've got some small group discussions which are happening again next year. It is varied across the UK of what regional support is there, but as I said, at the moment it doesn't really seem to matter because nobody can actually meet up physically, so sort of geographical sort of distance seems to be rather irrelevant. But you know, please do get in contact with us, and we can sort of see what we can match you up, what's going to be more suitable for you, and what opportunities are coming up as well, and actually look at your individual needs as well to see what really could be so much more helpful for you at this time.
Perfect. And I don't know, Rachel, if you wanted to add anything on available support around the UK.
Yeah, so I mean, as well as the specific research stuff that Ramona was talking about, joint dementia research, I just wanted to mention there's another way to get involved in research and have support through their networks. There are a number of different groups that support carers, as well as rare dementia support, that support people with dementia who, you know, I was very moved by Alan's account of his experience about people who still remain active, and I've got hope. There is something, isn't there, for all of us about feeling there's hope and peer support, and Esther's Lewy Bodies group as well. So there are lots of people out there. Of course, the Admiral Nurse Dementia helpline. I've probably forgotten loads out there, but I think lots of people I've seen are working really quite creatively. I hear from the families I'm supporting that physically some of the services have gone, and that's been devastating. I think, as Marika was saying, is the activity groups, the exercise groups, the connection. But there are lots of services that are trying to do things online. So, you know, do reach out to Rare Dementia Support Team because they might have some information. Contact the Admiral Nurse Dementia helpline. You know, ask the question, but yeah, don't try and go it alone.
Perfect, thank you all. So I think last question for today, it's actually for Simon. So we have a lot of compliments for your animation, so people really liked it. And also they're asking if there's any plan to look at auditory hallucinations in the future.
That's a really interesting question. I would be fascinated to do a project around auditory hallucinations. Actually, another element of my work is sort of a collaboration with a sound designer who is his sort of creative line of research is really focused on listening. And I think that's a really interesting line to go down. Within the current project, the stage of the project where we sort of develop sound, like a soundscape and sound design and perhaps music and atmosphere, haven't actually started yet. And I mean, interestingly, only one of the people that I interviewed talked directly about audio hallucinations. And I mean, I'd be really interested to hear more from Ramona on this. I don't know if we've got time now, but I mean, somebody talked about hearing voices outside, which is like a lot of hallucinations and a lot of sort of these sort of subjective visual experiences. Is there could well have been somebody outside. So I think there's really interesting questions there, and I think there's a really interesting project to be had. But I'd love to hear more from people. So I mean, do get in touch with any stories, or if you have any experiences you want to share, even if it wasn't for this project. I think that's definitely an interesting avenue to explore.
Perfect. Well, thank you, everyone. Before we close, just to pass along a small comment from Esther, who said about that she had a lot of success at the end after insisting a lot, using her GP to coordinate the advice from different consultants. So, and I think that raises the point that, you know, peer support and hearing from different carers like Mihoko, like Esther, and learning from their experiences is really important. So yeah, so do sign up for the Lewy Body Buddies as well. But just thank you to all the panel, and I'll hang on to Ramon now to finish the day off.
Thank you for fielding the questions. And I'll just reflect back about the question about auditory hallucinations following Simon's comment. So, I mean, visual hallucinations are by far more common than auditory, but auditory hallucinations can happen in Lewy body. And in some ways, the film that you made and the animation and the audio were guided by what people said. So, in a way, you heard a lot more about hallucinations and fluctuations, and that's what's led this. But I think you're right that it's a very interesting point that there can be changes across other domains. And I think that my experience, and I think other people's as well, is the more I work in this area, the more I realise I don't understand, and the more I realise sort of how complex and how different this disease is for everybody affected. So I think I'm going to bring things to a close. Thank you so much for joining us today at the Lewy Body Support Group meeting. I really hope that you found it to be helpful. Sincere apologies for the audio in the middle. We hope it's been picked up on the YouTube recording, and that we will be circulating that. And I want to thank our fantastic panelists. It's wonderful to hear from Hannah Gardner and Rachel Thompson. Great to hear from Alan Crawford's very personal story, Mihoko Ogawa-Higgins sharing your experiences. And thank you to Simon Ball and to Nikki Zimmerman and to Alicia Willoughby for reading Alan's words. Thank you to everybody who interacted with us and sent us questions and prodded us where we needed prodding. It's extremely helpful. It made it feel like sort of almost as though we were in the same room with you. I hope that soon we'll be able to do that. As we said, we'll be sending a short questionnaire about the meeting, and especially we would like to hear what things you want to hear for future meetings, and your thoughts and comments about the animations. And we'll also send that out with a summary of some of the research highlights that I mentioned at the beginning, and contact details that if you want to take part in either clinical trial or in future research, then who you can get in contact with. We're currently already planning our next meeting, and the date that we're aiming for, that we hope, is Wednesday, May the 12th. So put that in your diaries, Wednesday, May the 12th. We will confirm that nearer the time. So, I mean, depending, things sometimes change nearer the time, but that is currently our working date. And we expect that it will be as a webinar, but who knows? There's starting to be light at the end of the tunnel. So if it can be in person, then we'll work towards that. So we look forward to seeing you soon, and thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. Bye.
Hello, my name is Eva Tate, and I'm the Major Appeals Manager and Manager of the Rare Dementia Support Fund held by the charity The National Brain Appeal. The National Brain Appeal raises money as the dedicated charity for the National Hospital for Neurology and Neurosurgery and UCL Queen's Square Institute of Neurology. The National Brain Appeal raises funds for Rare Dementia Support's 2,000 members to help individuals living with rare and early onset forms of dementia, their families, friends, and healthcare professionals. And we also hold several other funds for FTD and dementia research. The funding helps not only the support group meetings in London, but also the regional support groups, admin and support staff, and all other associated expenses, including the new online support groups. When things return to normal, there are travel and accommodation bursaries available to help members attend the meetings. This year, we've raised our fundraising target to 300,000, and this will rise further to 350,000 by 2022 to develop and extend the service in the areas of education, support, and research, with the ultimate aim that everyone affected by a form of rare dementia will have access to specialist information and support, as well as contact with other people with a similar condition. We apply for grants from grant-making trusts, foundations and livery companies, and have a wonderful group of supporters, some of whom are here today, who fundraise for us in an amazing variety of ways. We would love it if you would like to sign up to our RDS fundraising newsletter to hear more of these stories and receive news of how we can support this community. We have had people do head shaves for us. We have had a gentleman drive across the Mongolian steppe in a VW Polo, and we have lots of people who take part in runs and virtual runs as well. At the end of February, we held a gala dinner called Mission Possible, where we raised 110,000 for the expansion of rare dementia support. And we are delighted to announce that in line with this expansion, the charity is committed to raise up to 7 million to create the world's first centre of excellence for rare dementias. If anyone would like to discuss any fundraising ideas or the new capital appeal, please do feel free to email me or my colleague Alexis, our Senior Fundraising Manager, who will speak about the innovative new ways you can be involved in fundraising for RDS, even during this challenging time. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Alexis Gebby and I'm the Senior Fundraising Officer at the National Brain Appeal. I just want to start off by saying a huge thank you to all of you who already fundraise for RDS. We really appreciate all of your incredible efforts, especially at this difficult time. My role at the National Brain Appeal is to look after all the amazing people taking on various fundraising activities for us. We have had people challenging themselves to run marathons, cycle long distances, climb mountains, and even take on skydives, all whilst raising money for RDS. We also have wonderful fundraisers out in the community who organise golf days, hold coffee mornings, host choir and carol concerts, and even shave their heads. These people ensure that more people like you can be supported through rare dementia support. If you're interested in becoming one of our fundraising heroes, then please do contact me. I am here to support you with your fundraising, and I'm more than happy to chat about any ideas that you may have. While at the moment it isn't possible to take part in a sporting challenge or hold a big fundraising gathering in your local community, we do have some fundraising ideas, such as taking on a solo virtual run or walk, hosting a quiz for your friends or family online, asking for birthday donations in lieu of going out, or even donating money that you may be saving by not travelling to work or buying your daily coffee. Do get in touch with me if you would like to get involved. In the meantime, take care and we hope to see you soon.